you you assume a scenario. Basically, you are in the kitchen and you are cooking something, and while you're cooking something in the kitchen, somebody comes into your kitchen and asks for a glass of water. So what you will do, you will stop your cooking process which you are doing, and you will first handle the guest which just came into your kitchen, and you will give the glass of water to him or her. So the same way what happen is, when your CPU is executing something, okay, let's say it is executing some process P1, and then let's say your device keyboard basically wants to request some executions. What it will do, let's say user press some button on the keyboard. So now keyboard basically will pass that event to the processor and will ask processor to execute that event basically. So how does it will do, so keyboard will basically send an interrupt to the processor. Okay, so what does processor will do, processor basically will stop execution of process P1. So till here the process P1 was executing, it will save the current context of the system, like the current state of this process, like in which state this process was. It will save the current state of this process, and then basically it will start executing on behalf of your keyboard interrupt which was basically happened, and keyboard notifies to this CPU. So now going forward, this process which will get execute, this process is called interrupt handler. Okay, so what does this interrupt handler will do, so interrupt handler will do some predefined task which was like it was supposed to do whenever there is some basically event happened or some interrupt generated from their devices. Okay, so once this interrupt handling is done, once the kernel has finished its processing of the request which came from keyboard, it will again basically it can again restore this process P1 to execute further if that process P1 has still the highest priority among other processes in the system. So this is how basically interrupt mechanism help to Linux kernel or the CPU processor to know which event it has to basically handle asynchronously. Okay, and as this is an asynchronous event, at any time any device can raise the interrupt, and our processor will be getting notification of these interrupt, and it will pass that event of interrupt to the Linux kernel, and the Linux kernel will handle that event accordingly. Okay, so this is the overall idea of handling of interrupt into the Linux kernel. Going forward, we are going to study in deep like how we can register the interrupt handler, how the interrupt will basically invoked by the devices, and how the Linux kernel is going to handle that interrupt.